We are live. We're live.
We're live.
We're just gonna say hello right now to people before we get started, to give Gordon a chance to get here and give people a chance to see that we're here. Hey, peoples. Yep, so yeah, again, we're waiting on Gordon James. Let me text Gordon James, see where he is. See if he, make sure he's not having any difficulties.
I think it's that they're looking for an ID.
Oh, yeah?
They shouldn't.
Yeah, I didn't have that problem. Yeah, I logged right in.
But so, hey, Tiffany, what we can do is go ahead and play the video while we
Okay.
wait on Gordon and the video about this kind of video overview about the project. We're going to let people look at while we wait on Gordon and get settled.
Okay.
And again, people, those of you who are on with us with Facebook, kind of an introduction to the project.
Wow, nice page. Well, that's a video.
Say what? Say what? Whose world is this?
Hey. That was nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oops. Let me stop that.
Yeah, so if we can go ahead and get started, I think Gordon will come in soon. I just texted.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. How you doing? This is Tiffany Fontenot and Patrick Oliver with We Are Here, a literacy organization for Black boys and young Black men. We wanted to thank you for coming today and begin our conversation about young Black men and literacy. So first, I wanted to talk about what we do. What we're doing is creating an information hub, kind of intersecting families, teachers, librarians, community activists, and policymakers and researchers with Black literacy for young men. Everybody's kind of segregated and doing their things, and this is an information space where everybody can kind of see what everyone else is doing to further our missions and trying to encourage Black boys and young Black men to read. So to kick us off today, we have two gentlemen who have contributed greatly in terms of representation for our young men to see themselves in literature. And Patrick, you can introduce them for us. That would be amazing. Thank you.
My introduction is going to be formal. We're going to say three because we know Gordon's going to come in here soon, so we definitely going to have three. But my introduction is going to be informal because I know these gentlemen pretty well. Many of you who are watching know them pretty well because they have been very active in the community when we talk about literature, when we talk about literature for adults as well. Both of them, I know, have done work in the community. When we talk about supporting other organizations, developing literary arts programs. So they've been doing a number of things. So Tiffany, you mentioned Wade Hudson. Wade go back over 20, close to 20 years. Co-founder of Just Us Books with his wife, Cheryl Willis Hudson, where we shared about some of the books that he has. And also, he's, again, done a lot of work in the community, working with various organizations, helping them develop and understanding the importance of having Black literature in their schools and in their communities. Tony Medina, we go back a long way. His many visits to Little Rock, Arkansas. We could just talk about that for 2 or 3 days. About Medina coming to Little Rock and the wonderful things that he did for young people in Little Rock. He really helped found my organization, Say It Loud, which is Tony's going his 25th year, 25 years next year. So hey, brother,
I got the
we have a
great.
celebration schedule in Little Rock, so put it on your schedule in April. You come to Little Rock for our celebration.
Wow.
Yep. And Wade, I'm going to invite you as well for 25 years.
Okay, great. Congratulations, Pat. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And so, again, Tony had done a lot of worked at Third World, work I've done at Third World Press. We had a chance to do some things while I was working there. And just the list would go on. Yeah, but both of these gentlemen, again, they are just profound. Gordon James will join us later. I met Gordon through working with Derek Barnes on his 2 books, Crown Ode to the Fresh Cuts and I Am Everything. But Gordon is one of the premier illustrators of children's books. He's a fine artist as well. So these are the 3 gentlemen that we have that's going to be dropping some science on us today about the importance of literature for Black boys and young men, and the importance of having it in our homes, most importantly, in our schools, in our public libraries, any place that we congregate, Black boys are there. We should have books that celebrate their existence and who they are. Black boy joy, Black boys live, all of that. We want to make sure it's being celebrated. And that's why we're here to kick off this inaugural conversation around this, you said, literary hub for Black boys. Tiffany, go ahead and kick us off with some questions for our esteemed panelists.
Sure. So I think before we talk about what's happening now, I kind of want to take it back because a lot of times we talk about where we are now, but there's the things that happened to us like as we were growing up and growing into literacy. So when you think back about your childhood and things like that, like what was your reading experience like in school and with libraries and things like that? What was your literacy experience?
You want me to go first, Tony? Since I'm the oldest here.
I'm deferred to the master.
Okay. Growing up, I really loved to read. And I read what was available to me. My parents were not readers. I'm the oldest in my family. Well, actually, I'm the second oldest, the oldest son. My father used to read the newspaper every morning, but there were very few books in our household. But I used to go to the school library, the small library in our all-Black school, to read. My problem was that there were not books that had characters in them who looked like me or had experiences to which I could relate. So I had to find ways to engage myself in reading about other folks' stories and finding the humanity in those stories that I could connect with. But I always loved to read, and I don't know where it came from, because again, my family was not a family of readers, but I just love to read. Again, I think it's so important to have books that all kids can relate to and they can find themselves in those books.
When I was, I'm like Wade, I didn't have a family, a household full of books and stuff. And not that many readers that I could identify except for my grandmother. And, she had a big giant Bible and she would read paperback novels and stuff, but there wasn't really that many books in the household. So I didn't have that habit. I was mainly, a TV watcher, so that was my form of accessing, I guess, stories. So it's like twofold, my introduction into reading. And one of them was a friend of mine growing up, a close friend of mine. We were like in elementary and junior high school together, named Troy Ward. He used to work for New York City Transit and passed about, I think, over 10 years ago. But he would steal libraries. He would steal books from the libraries, and he'd be like, yo, Tony, you got to read this. You got to read this. And they were books like Down These Mean Streets by Perry Thomas, Man, Child in the Promised Land by Claude Brown, and Daddy Was a Numbers Runner by Louise Merriweather. And so that was my introduction to reading stuff that I could see, where I come from reflected. But it wasn't until the 9th grade when I went to junior high school 101 in the Thousand Neck Housing, projects, the area in the Bronx. And we were supposed to do a book report. I didn't do the book report because I was kind of lazy and I didn't have the habit of reading and stuff like that. So I failed that. It just turned out, it just so happened that half the class failed the assignment. They either didn't do it or they just did a lousy job. So our English teacher, his name was Mr. Delos Reyes. He was our favorite teacher. He handed out the list that he gave in the beginning of the school year again and said, you have this last chance to do it. I didn't want to disappoint him nor my grandmother who raised me. So I went to the library. The library was a place that we used to go to hang out. In the summer, we escaped the heat for the air conditioning. In the winter, we escaped the cold. So we never took out books. I didn't know how to look up a book. So I had to ask the librarian if, how to find a book. And so there was this title called Flowers for Algernon by Danielle Keyes. And I asked her, how would I find this book? And she taught me how to use the card catalog. I looked it up and I found it, and it was like a magic trick. I couldn't believe it was there. So I took it out, and that was the book that really got me hooked. And I started reading a lot after that. I did a book report. I got an A+ on it. And that's the book that made me want to be a writer. But then, fast forward some years later, it was James Baldwin's essays that taught me how to write, actually.
I was, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add to what Tony is saying. Actually, Tony, it wasn't until I got to Southern University that I was exposed to all the great Black writers and the body of literature. And that's when I was determined to become a writer. In high school, I used to write, and I shared it in my memoir that's coming out in October. I wrote plays and short stories, but I didn't think that I could make a career writing, because I couldn't identify with any other writers that weren't James Baldwin, all these wonderful writers. Their books were not in the library that I went to. It was all these European classics and all of that, Western literature that I was exposed to at an all Black school, believe it or not. But it wasn't until I got to Southern University that I really recognized that there were a lot of wonderful Black writers who had made careers out of the profession, that I sort of thought that maybe I could tackle this as a career as well. And I just read like crazy, man. I read everything I could get my hands on. The Black arts movement was really at its peak during that time in the mid to late 60s and early 70s. And, Nikki Giovanni and Hakeem Marabuti were producing a wonderful bodies of work. So I just like delved into it like never before.
Well, I had a college experience too. I don't know if you and Patrick know about this story, but I went to Baruch College right after the Army. I went into the Army to make money to go to college, right? So I went to Baruch College, which is part of the University system, located like 23rd and Park Avenue. And my first English professor was Addison Gale Jr., the chief proponent of the Black aesthetic movement. Yeah. He assigned the Black poets, he assigned Richard Wright, he assigned, James Baldwin, and he used to talk all the time about his friendship with Baldwin and how Baldwin, he called him Jimmy, he said, Jimmy gave me tickets to fly to stay in his house at the south of France. So he would, and I couldn't believe it because James Baldwin was my main man at the time, right? So my mind was blown. All the other students were intimidated by him because he was just so cool. And he always asked us questions and we were like perplexed because, people weren't reading. And they didn't know who he was. I ran to the library, and got all his books, the school library. And I was like, I can't believe this. So every day after class, I would go up to him and talk to him and stuff like that. And he was very helpful to me. I went to his funeral, actually, And one of my other professors, Sandra Towns, who he was close to, she introduced me to Haki at Addison Gale's funeral and said, Haki, you got to publish Tony Medina. And he eventually did, along with you.
How did y'all put pen to paper consistently and believe that like I can kind of do this? Like, what did it take to get in that habit?
For me, I think that writing is often a gift that we're given. That gift needs to be nurtured and developed. And I'm not saying that one cannot develop the skill, but I think some people are born with the gift. I sort of believe that I was born with that gift. When I was 8, 9 years of age, I was writing. And I've been writing all of my life, whether poetry or short stories or plays or novels. So for me, it's not difficult to actually do the writing itself. My challenge now is, because I'm running a publishing company, it's having the time to really set aside to write what I want to write. The pandemic, although negative in so many other ways, was a positive for me because I couldn't really travel like I normally do. I was here at home mostly. I have written so much, and this period of time has been a blessing. So I guess my answer would be, it's almost like a singer, whether you get a contract, to record a song or whatever. If God has put that gift in you, you're going to exercise it. I mean, there are a lot of great singers who are singing in church. They will never put out a record. You will never see them on TV, but they have this gift they've been blessed with, and they bless people with it at church or at different occasions, So I see writing the same way. Obviously, what we want to do is to get published and get our work made public and to make a living at what we do. But if I were not really making a living at writing, I think I would still be writing.
Wade is absolutely right. I feel like it's a gift, like it's a mission, we're born to do. But, I just want to make a weird analogy. There are people, I come from family members who, addicted to drugs and stuff like that. But if they had never been exposed to such a drug, they would never be, they would never find out that they had this disease of addiction. What you, Tiffany, and Patrick does, and also Wade and Cheryl do as institution builders around literacy, is that you make it possible for kids like me growing up to be exposed to the stuff that you may have that gift in you, but it's not nurtured, it's not, so that once it gets the proper nourishment, it's allowed to flourish. So with me, it was reading, it was being challenged by that teacher, being taught by that librarian, and reading that book by Danielle Keyes and falling in love with it. And that was my passion. That was the thing that I was so passionate about. And that's why it's so easy for me to write, because it's something I love to do. And that's it's something that I do the best out of anything besides complain like a New Yorker.
Tom, I want to follow up on that. You said the exposure. Is that one of the reasons that you do so much work in the community, because you see these young people coming to your events just thirsty?
It is. I mean, that's what your organization is all about. And you grabbed me up in when we were in Georgia at the Black Writers Conference in Atlanta back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I was doing what I naturally do, and it's to expose kids to the love of reading and writing. And also, we always say reading and writing. It's never about just one thing over the other.
I want to talk about like role models, because a lot of times there's this like culture of reading, and for some people they're in an environment where they've had that pattern long enough. But can you think about like who would be the importance of that, and then who was that reading role model for you? Or did you not have one? I don't know, you know?
Yeah. Growing up, I did not have a role model in terms of literacy. But what I did have was a community that encouraged me to be my best. Whatever I tried to do, I got support. When I was in the 9th grade, I wrote a play for my American history, well, for world history class. It was a play about democracy versus communism. Now, I got this idea. I wanted to write this play because I thought this was the best way to really show the difference between democracy and communism. And I went to my teacher who was teaching that particular class, and I asked him if I could write the play. Nobody had ever done that in my school before. And he said, "Do you think you can do it?" I said, "I think so." And so he gave me a shot at doing it. I wrote the script, brought it back, showed it to him, and he read it, and he said, "You know, this is really good." And so we actually mounted that play. So, I mean, it's support like that encouraged me to continue to write, you know, and there are other people in my small town where I grew up who encouraged me that way. Now, I mentioned that it's not particularly related to literacy per se, but it's the encouragement to dream, the encouragement to develop the gift that you have that keeps you moving forward, keeps you working, and also providing that hope that something can come from what you're doing, you know. And so that's how I would sort of describe it for me. And I think without that support, without that encouragement, I would not be the writer that I am today.
Yeah, my experience is similar to Wade's in that I didn't have models for reading. You know, I'm thinking of Lucille Clifton poem, "Come Celebrate With Me," where she said, "I had no models." I didn't have models for, you know, reading, but I did have a lot of support. So when I did read that book, Flowers for Algernon, and finished it that weekend, and wrote the book report and had a revelation that I wanted to be a writer, I announced it to my family. One of my aunts bought me a desk, a proper desk. Another aunt bought me a manual typewriter so I could, you know, fulfill my dreams of being a writer. And I've always had that support. Even going to college and having Addison Gale Jr. And I had the idea of doing a magazine called Writers of Color. And he said, "Tony, whatever you want, I know all the writers. Just tell me who you want and I'll get you them." I said, wow. So, and I had, you know, Sandra Towns as well as being supportive. And then when you get into the, you know, Patrick could tell you that, Wade could tell you, you get into the writing community, the poetry scene, let's say in New York. And the elders are there, like Sam Anderson was one of my mentors. And then of course, Raka becomes a mentor to me, Sonia Sanchez and Miguel Agrin and stuff. I mean, it was Amina Amiri who introduced me to Miguel at Sekou Sundiata's party, who said, you need to meet Miguel. He lived in a penthouse. So it's always like that. You know, you're going to always find a community waiting for you.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So what do we do today when we're fighting against technology and video games and things like that for kids to find those communities and those mentors? What do you think is missing, or what do you think needs to happen that's not happening?
I don't think it's an either or. Go ahead, Wayne.
No, go ahead, because you're teaching, so you're in more direct contact with young people.
Yeah, I think we need to just embrace the technology to a certain extent and to kind of like utilize it. You got to meet people where they are, you know, most of the time, you know, be it ideologically, be it, you know, technologically. We have to kind of meet folks where they are. Like, you know, in the revolution, you know, let's say the Cuban Revolution or any type of revolution, let's say where the people are, you know, very religious. you can't try to take away their religion. You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
That becomes the portal in which you connect with them. So
Mhm.
I think we have to just come up to speed and try to connect with the students where they are, the young people where they are, because they're the ones who are going to lead us into the future.
Yeah, and I think it's a mistake to present it as if they do have to give up some things that they really
Right.
like. You're going to lose them. You're going to lose them.
Mhm. What do you think? There's always that deficit approach to the statistics. We hear about young Black boys and reading scores and things of that nature. We know that we need representation in books. We know that, we need more cultural responsive teachers. I mean, everybody's saying this, but we are also fighting those same things with cultural responsiveness now in classrooms and things of that nature. What can teachers do nowadays to try to support, our boys, like within this environment that's so contentious about us understanding our identity, to be able to attach to these books and things like that?
I think one mistake that teachers make, and I'm not a teacher, I know you are, and Tony, I think we misunderstand boys a lot. Boys have a lot of energy. They're energetic. They want to move, but in the school system, we want to like put them in a position and insist that they remain there.
Fine.
And that the only way you can learn is that you sit quietly in your seat and for 40 minutes or whatever period of time. And if you move left or right, you're going to be chastised for it. Mm-hmm. So I just think that the environment for facilitating the learning for boys is really not conducive to it. Boys, I believe, have a different learning style. I know when I was growing up, I was active, but it did not mean that I did not want to learn or did not like reading, but sometimes my mind would wander. I would think about the baseball game that was on last night, but it does, again, it didn't mean that I was not interested in reading. I think the other thing that really needs to happen, before the pandemic, there were growing numbers of programs that were catered to boys, literacy programs that were catered just to boys. There were several in Philadelphia, a few in LA, where men actually, sat down, read books, discussed books with boys. And I think that that's a great way to connect, because there's a way that we as men can relate to boys and inspire them and encourage them that the school system can't do. Another thing that started to happen too was that there were a number of Black male organizations that had adopted schools. So they actually went to school systems to be there, to be mentors, to assist, and just be a presence in the lives of some of the boys who, some of them don't have male role models. So I think these are some of the things that can take place and hopefully will continue once this pandemic is over. But I think the direct connection is really key.
I think teachers need to do a few things. And, you have teachers that do, they think outside the box, they go beyond the curriculum, they challenge the curriculum, they make it more inclusive, they reach out to organizations like Patrick's, yours, to get them involved with the students. But I remember when Patrick brought me out a couple of years ago to Dallas for the African American Museum, he had a program there. His Say It Loud had a program there, and I read some poems from my book, 13 Ways of Looking at a Black Boy, and I think from Alfonso Jones. And there were kids there that he brought there, or the parents brought there, they were really, boys, they were really not into reading and stuff like that. But after I read the type of stuff that I read, you could see them light up, and they totally connected with it. So you got to find ways that are going to reach them and connect with them. also the biggest thing is, what Wade and Cheryl does as publishers, they bring Black books out into the world, and also Latino-based books out into the world, right? And so the publishing house, the big giant publishers, they don't do that for the most part. And even though we have this little slight bump from the Black Lives Matter movement that we had jump off over last summer, it's still not enough. There's still a tremendous void there with the books that are being published, in the mainstream, and also that which is being taught, because they should be learning about the Harlem Renaissance, but also the Black, the Black arts movement. They should know about all the poets of the Black arts movement. They should know about the poets of today. So I think that there has to be, a various multiple ways in which to tackle this problem.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that we've seen over the years, Tony, you're absolutely right. We have taken our books to the community and to schools. For example, we've gone to PTA meetings, where we not just present our books, but we talk about an array of books that are available that relate to the Black experience or that are multicultural in nature. And oftentimes we find that teachers, in addition to the parents, don't even know these books exist. They don't even know,
So it's connected.
Yeah. So it's like the nitty gritty. I'm trying to think of a word to describe it. The nitty gritty way of getting these books into the hands of not just the students, but the hands of the teachers and also parents. And we've also conducted workshops about reading, establishing a family reading tradition, and really share steps and ways to do that, So, and again, we found that a lot of people just don't know. They really don't know. I remember Cheryl did a reading to a group of unwed mothers in New York, and her focus obviously was reading the book that she had, but she found that she had to also show that mother how to hold that baby, because no one had ever showed her how to do it. So she had to show her how to hold her own baby, and then read to them. So a lot of it is teaching, educating, sharing, mentoring. We have to do much more of it.
And just to piggyback quickly on that, after George Floyd was murdered, right, by the police, and it became this international Black Lives Matter movement last summer, you had all of these educators, to include media specialists, so, AKA librarians. They were saying, what books should we be reading? What books should we be teaching?
Yeah.
They're asking us about racism and all this stuff. Like, what the hell? I mean, you're the same. And so, my last books, 13 Ways and Alfonso Jones, they were selling like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting big royalty checks and stuff like that. I mean, it's like they didn't even know that our stuff existed.
That's right.
They didn't even bother to do a little cursory search. Like Patrick has to bang his head against the wall to get these teachers in these schools to open up to Black literature and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think.
But you know what it is, Tony, as it is in publishing, too many people who are in position of power are wedded to old traditions, and they don't want to change.
Like Hollywood.
They do, exactly. They don't want to change. And it's like, butting your head against the wall to get them to really understand that there are new ways to do things, and it is a struggle.
Project has to write 1,000 grants every year just to get a little bit of money to do programs.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Hey,
They should be embracing, these ideas.
Yep. I want to play off of Tony's question, yours, way the point you were trying to make too. Tony mentioned the infusion of all these requests that came because of George Floyd. And a lot of books were sold. The way the numbers, and particularly did play out to respond to this as well. But when we look at the statistics, it still was a minute number of books being sold, and published by the publishing industry. Wait, could you just give our families, the community, just an idea of the ridiculous number of small number of books published for and about Black children, and it's a ridiculous number.
We can't
You're
hear.
mute, Wade. You're mute.
Sorry, there are thousands of books that are published every year by publishing companies, mostly by major publishing houses. There are 5 really major publishing houses that dominate the industry. But roughly, and I don't have the statistics at hand now, but I think probably 6 to 7% of the books that are published are written and illustrated by Black authors, Black book creators. There still are a large percentage of books about the Black experience that are written by people other than Black people, and because it's easier for other folks to get a contract to write a book than it is for us. Now, I must say though, Pat, that there has been some progress.
Yes, because I want to talk about that. The optimism. There's some optimism I want to talk about.
Yeah, there has been progress. But I think we must be aware that the progress that has taken place has come about because of our work.
Yes.
We have been our best advocates. And when I say we, I'm talking about Black book creators, people like you, Patrick, who are selling our books and getting the word out through your programs. But I think what we must be aware that this cannot be another trend.
Right.
That's what I was going to say.
Another trend.
Because Wade was there. I mean, I think Wade and your whole crew back in the day in the 60s and 70s emerged out of the fact that, you had this little bump in publishing Black books in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And then it waned again. And then there was another fight to get more.
In the 90s.
Yeah. Now again, but then it's going to wane again. That's the problem, But just to illustrate what Wade is talking about in terms of the numbers, I was a judge along with Marilyn Nelson, the poetry judge of the Lee Bennett Hopkins Poetry Award last year, right? We got tons of books from the publishing, mainly from the big giant presses and also independent presses to read through, to sift through, and to pick the winner and stuff like that. I would say that like at least 99% of those books were white authors.
Yeah.
But
there were a lot of books published.
Even in terms of representation, in terms of characters, you will see animals threefold compared.
Yeah, exactly.
To main characters.
Animals get
children of color, right?
Yeah. You check the bestseller list for children's books, and you see what's selling.
Right.
It's animal books.
A lot of them were animal books, and I couldn't stand them. I was like, God, how many more could I read?
Right. So then so in terms of teaching and librarianship, there's so few of us of color, right? Because we understand, representing ourselves. When you talk about how you didn't see a book till the representation probably until high school, right? In terms of learning about James Baldwin and just kind of thinking of these things, what needs to happen with the majority population in terms of this, because if BIPOC librarians and teachers are only representing maybe 13% of the of the teaching and library population, look how hard it is for us to get our voices heard, right? So we have to get that majority to be introducing those books to you starting in preschool when they say that pipeline happens, right? That pipeline needs to be with these teachers and these librarians introducing these books that represent kids, right? And that's what I see as something that needs to happen. It needs to start immediately. Those story time programs, they need to have representations of Black boys. They need to have all cultural representation. But these are the things that, have to be brought to their attention.
Yeah,
No.
I hear you. I think parents, Black parents, must be more involved and more active. There are many of them doing the hard work, and I applaud them, but we need more. Think about this. Look at the pressure that these white racists put on the school system to get changes that they want. I mean, it's all like an all-out war. That's how involved and engaged they are in getting their point of view or their positions advanced within the school systems or wherever, So we have to be as determined as they are, because the thing that's starting to happen now is that this pushback is starting to be revved up about stopping this progress that has been made in book publishing. You see it in Texas. I think I was reading on Facebook where Nikki Grimes said that the school system had banned her book, one of her books.
Sure
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. And so
This book, I'm afraid for this book. Let's be clear.
Oh, let me tell you, we were in North Carolina.
Mhm.
This was a couple of years ago, doing a book tour for We Rise, and we went to this elementary school. And when we got there, the principal met us and said that she was thinking about canceling our presentation to the students. It was a mixed school, and she said that she had gotten so much negative feedback from white parents that she was afraid to go forward with it. So Cheryl and I talked with her and told her what we were going to do. And so she said, well, listen, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I said, you should take a stand. And so she did it. And it went extremely well. All the kids loved what we did, because we're not there to pulverize white people. We were just talking about, what's in our book, and sharing that story. But the point about this is that a lot of white parents are fighting back and saying, we don't want this kind of material in our schools, and they are pushing.
Thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they want this Western approach to continue. And if we don't recognize that this push is going to come, because I think the whole social justice movement, because of George Floyd and all the others that were killed over the last couple of years, it's starting to wane now. So a lot of these white businesses and corporations that were donating money, that's basically what they did, was donated money and didn't make any sizable changes. They're moving on to something else.
Yeah.
Well, in the 60s, right, you had this whole notion of building institution building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we have to do both institution building and infiltrate the institutions, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I come out of the writing community where everybody I know is practically, MFA. And all, students wanting to go MFA. And I try to say, look, let me tell you something. MFA, it's all right, but it ain't all that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And there are no jobs waiting for your ass at the end of that, right? The thing is this. You have to make being a media specialist, AKA a librarian, sexy.
Yeah, there you go.
That is a great profession.
Yep.
People should be majoring in library science. Why? Because once you get into a library, you are in charge of an institution.
That's exactly right.
You can do your own programming.
Yep.
You can select books and do all that stuff. I'm sorry, Tiffany, go ahead.
No,
No, you're right, Tony.
you're right. We do, but we need to have people see us as well. I think one of the things,
That's a great job.
Dr. Goldie Mohammed has a book called Cultivating Genius, and she talks about the history in our community of creating spaces for literacy when others did not, right? Most of us don't even know when we weren't allowed to read. we made spaces to read out, even in spite of that or despite that, we were
church
still
was a
doing that.
space.
What can we do to bring that type of, like engagement and advocacy and all that back to our community so that we don't have to wait on that. We can be doing this ourselves. What
You're
more?
doing it. You're doing it. You
Yeah.
and Patrick are doing it. Plus, you can do these things like we're doing now online. You can have book clubs online on Zoom and stuff. Reach global people. Have conversations across countries and stuff and communities.
Yeah, I think too, you're absolutely right, Tony. But I think also we have to find ways to engage some of those organizations in our communities that have a lot of power and a lot of clout and a lot of influence. I was talking to someone the other day about the NAACP Image Award. When they first started, they didn't include literature or literacy. It was only for television and film. And so a group of us started a campaign to complain about that and said that literacy should be a part of the awards. And it took several years to get them to see that point, and they included it. Now, the first year they included it, they only did adult books. So we had to go back and say, okay, you got to include children's books. So what I'm saying is that we have to really push those institutions and organizations in our community to step up too. There are so many of them that are really positioned to do so many amazing things. I mean, some of them are doing it, but more need to be involved. Like, look at the role that the Divine Nine played in supporting our vice president. I mean, they were enormously important to her efforts, right? You have 100 Black men. Patrick, you and I have talked about this to some degree. 100 Black women. Some of them do have literacy programs. Well, suppose every chapter of 100 Black men had a literacy program in the cities where they are. Or 100 Black women.
Black Congress made this a major emphasis. I think especially with the coronavirus, and we're still fighting through this in schooling, it needs to be like one of the top priorities politically in our agendas and everything to have literacy there so that it can get to these local organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Tony, very quickly, what Tony was saying is imperative and important. Make it sexy, because that's the key. It's marketing. How are we marketing these books to our community? What is it? We unfortunately don't have these superstar athletes who market sodas, Gatorade, all the McDonald's, pizza. They market food to us, but how can we get them, or just ourselves? How do we come with creative ideas and concepts, like Tony was saying, to make it sexy for these young brothers out there who want to read? Go ahead, Tony.
You know what though? I think I'm agreeing with you guys, but I'm remembering some of my school visits, and the schools that really promoted the visit ahead of time had posters up, made announcements. And when we came to the school, those kids were on fire, man. They wanted me to autograph their hands and stuff like that. So I mean, it can be done, but I think that we as a society, we don't value literacy and books the way we do sports and movies and television. That's the problem.
That's about making it sexy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The promotion stuff. But I have one more point to lay on the table before we move on, and it has to do with what we've just been talking about. Remember, when we talk about literacy in our community, we cannot forget our brothers and sisters behind bars and our young people behind bars. And because the prison industrial complex has made it very complicated for us. We have so many people there. And I think this literacy reach into, because I come from, parents that were both incarcerated, this reach into the juvenile detention centers and the prisons with literacy and books and getting them to write, and also including them perhaps in these Zoom type of discussions and stuff like that. It helps prevent more of our kids getting swept up and sucked into the prison system.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the
Well, in
prison
fact, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and that the prison system has been fighting the type of books that reflect them within there, so they don't even have access to books that, you know, could have that influence as well.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Let me
actually,
very
they could,
quickly, I want to shout out to Jeannie Thompson, who is in Alabama, based in Montgomery. Her program is dynamic. Jeannie Thompson. Can't think of the name of it offhand, but I'll think of it before we get off. But she's doing the work you're talking about, Tony, taking creative writing, poetry inside the juvenile system in the state of Alabama. Go ahead, Wade.
That's good. Now I'm going to say that there are statistics that show that they can track the inability to read to incarceration,
Mm.
and they
Look
can
at
start
R.
tracking
Kelly
it.
right now. Look at R.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, they can start in 3rd, 4th grade, you know, start tracking that. So literacy is so important, and because it's not just reading, but it provides you. Walter Dean Myers told a story once. He said that he had established his career as a successful writer. He's, you know, written many books, sold a lot of books, but his father never said anything about his writing, about his books. He never gave him any positive response or anything. His father passes away, and so he's looking through the trunk that his father left, and he found out through some letters and that his father could not read, and he did not know that. And his mother had facilitated his inability to read for all those years. So his father was not able to say how proud he was of his son, because he had never read his books, because he could not read the books,
Yeah,
because he couldn't read.
yeah.
Don't forget about dyslexia too in the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
Exactly.
important.
Yeah.
Hey, we just got Gordon James to step in here with us. What's up, brother Gordon? How you doing?
Hey, I apologize. I had to run around today. I'm actually up in Baltimore. I'm working on a book. I was doing some book research. So, but
Okay.
I'm glad I made it. I hope I had it at 1 o'clock on my calendar. I hope I'm not late.
You're very late, but we're gonna excuse you.
Oh my goodness. I apologize. I apologize.
Yeah.
Hey, Gordon, how you doing, man?
Hey Wade, I'm sorry to everybody else who was doing the right thing this morning. So
Yeah.
So
Hey,
what?
Gordon, we can let Gordon just jump right here in terms of what we were talking about, representation in books, and you being an illustrator. You really came at a perfect time, but that's what we were just kind of getting to, the selling of books and how to make it sexy. And I think that's what illustrators do in terms of their role in the market of the book. They're illustrating books. So just kind of give us an idea how, when you start creating books for young people, I don't want you to necessarily use the word sexy for young people, but how do you make it where they gravitate for it? What do you think about that process?
I try to think about, especially a lot of times when I'm doing books, I try to think about, especially when I'm doing Black books, I try to think that, oh, we have a lot of different skin tones. We live in a lot of different places. We've had a lot of different experiences. And so like the main character may be a specific character, but I try to, and I'm illustrating him, but I try to have people that look like people they're going to encounter in the in their neighborhood, in their community, in their diaspora. Like just whatever I can do to try to get a lot of the different things that make our Blackness so beautiful. I try to find them in the books, and whether they're in the main character or whether it's just somebody walking through the background.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that's important. So Tony, I know Tony, both of you work with illustrators. So let's maybe play out of what he just talked about. How is that the kind of, when you talk to the illustrators you work with, how do you kind of play off of that?
Well, I usually don't tell the illustrators what the characters look like. I mean, it's in the writing, but the only time I did that was when I was working on I'm Alfonso Jones, and Stacey Robinson, who did, all of the drawings and stuff, whereas John Jennings did the inking. He called me up and was like trying to get a feeling for the characters, right? So I would just give him like some pop cultural references to glom onto. So I say, yeah, well, Scobie, he kind of looks like a chunkier version of Richard Pryor when he had his afro. So he's kind of like Bookman and Richard Pryor put together, you know, like that type of stuff. And so then he was able to just bust it out, email it to John. He inked it immediately. They showed it to me and I was like, oh my God, it blew my mind because, you know, I'm a writer. But we only have 5 minutes left. So I'll let Gordon, you know, handle that because he didn't have that much time.
You know, when I try to think about what a character looks like, I try to refer to the writing. But because I'm a representational artist, I love to work with reference. So I will try to find kids that look like I feel that this character is going to look like, and I cast the book, you know, and I find the kid, a mother, a father, you know, and I try to really create the people and create that environment, and I kind of try to cast the book like I would cast a movie.
Well, you know what's interesting with Stacey Robinson, for some reason he had Alfonso Jones being lighter complexion, and I said no, he's darker, you know. So we had to battle out for the representation of what Alfonso actually looked. That was the only time that happened to me before.
But you know, normally publishers don't like for the writer and the illustrator to collaborate together. Is that pretty much standard for you, Gordon? Because I know, like I'm working with E.B. Lewis now on a book, and you know, the manuscript is done, and so he is given freedom to interpret the work, the manuscript himself.
Yeah, that's honestly how I like it. You know, I like for the writer to just give me the manuscript, and you know, before I start getting a whole bunch of direction, you know, just wait to see what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, you know, I live in this visual space, and I would like to hope that because it's my area of expertise, like what I'm going to come up with is going to be better than what you imagine. That's the goal, you know. That's the goal, and I do know that the writer's going to look at it and you know, and get a very strong opinion about what it should be. But I would at least love that first opportunity before we start doing all the communications for me to be like, this is what my vision for the book is.
Yeah. Well, what I've found is that in working with illustrators, they have brought, man, so much to the table that I didn't even think about as a writer, you know. So the collaboration and giving the illustrator freedom to interpret the work is just so important. I think it gives it a whole nother life. Oh, we lost Gordon.
I have a question I'd like to ask, just really quickly. For your book, We Rise, We Resist, for Tony's book, Alfonso Jones and 13 Ways to Look at Black Boys, and for Crown and I Am Every Good Thing, how would you want teachers and parents to use those books? Like, what are you hoping? How could they use those books? What is something that you want them to
frequently?
How do you teach Alfonso Jones? I love the book. How would you want somebody to teach that? What do you want them
Tiffany,
to do?
it's so much in there. It's just hard to even fathom. I mean, I think it could be in a college class. You could just do a whole year, a whole semester on it, you know, but it's up to the teacher. It's up to the students, you know. I can't impose myself. I'm just glad that they're using it, you know.
Sometimes people look for themes though, and they would like help with the themes. So what would you suggest, if anything?
Well, you know, most books today have teacher's guides where they have suggestions. Yeah. Gordon, you want to? Since Tony and I have been talking, you want to?
I feel like with Crown and I'm Every Good Thing, I think that those books can just be read any time. I feel like they're very, very universal themes. I feel like they star African-American boys, and they're really for African-American boys, but I feel like anybody can relate to these books. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, you know, when you go see a movie, and I just think about all the stories that I read when I was a kid. Most of the characters were white, and I was expected to learn the lessons and relate to that character. And I think that the characters and the main characters in I'm Every Good Thing and Crown are very, very relatable. And I think that those books are great for the Black kids that look like the main characters of the book, and they're great for the kids that don't. Mm-hmm. So it's that, you know, that whole, was it the window and the mirror thing?
Yes.
So yeah, I don't think that there's any time or place where those books are not great.
And going earlier, we talked about what got Tony and Wade. We asked them what got them inspired. What was it? So in terms of you illustrating, what was it that got you going in terms of being an illustrator when it hit you?
Well, what got me going in terms of being an illustrator, I come from a very artsy family. We actually just lost my cousin Percy, who was a painter. He was 99. And I have a cousin named Dave, who's about 10 years older than me, and he's a comic book artist. And he's done a whole bunch of great projects. And so for me, it was like, and my dad's very talented too. And he's a police officer, but he can draw and he can sing. And so, I just had a whole lot of creativity around me. And that generation, like my dad's generation and my cousin Percy's generation, they had a lot of talent, but everybody went into more safe, secure, mainstream jobs. And they worked to put people like me and my cousin, where we could live like we didn't have to have any fear about like how we're going to eat, how we're going to, and so like that's the inspiration. It's a lot of my family, my immigrant grandparents too. Like I just think about the privilege I have to be able to have such a fun job and a job that's risky, and so those are my big inspirations.
Yeah, any questions out there, Tiff, you see online before we?
Oh, a lot. Hold on. Okay.
Tony, you were trying to make a point?
Yeah, I was gonna say with Alfonso Jones, I remember last winter, Stacey Robinson was doing these things where he had this collective go online, and they were reading, they did a reading of Alfonso Jones like weekly. They continued on. And he invited me on, and I was just there. I was like, incredible, just hear it performed. That could be a way to teach it, where they actually read it aloud and bring it to life and then discuss issues. But go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I think as a librarian, a lot of times I work at a school teacher training program, and a lot of times teachers come to me, how do I use this? That's the thing. It's one thing to say you could do anything, but they're teachers coming from a majority who don't understand the culture in the same way and need those cues to understand how to use the book.
Go ahead.
If I can jump in, I've seen lessons with Crown where they've had kids like write and illustrate the things that they feel like, that things that they do that make them feel really good about themselves. And Crown, the young man, gets a haircut, and he just talks about how like all the different ways and that it's going to affect him for the better. And I've seen really great lessons where kids will do either do pages or little books of what makes them good. What are the best things about them with I'm Every Good Thing.
Also,
it's really neat the things they come up with.
Alfonso Jones has a free teacher's guide that you could just access on the Lee and Low website, leeandlow.com. So that helps.
Yeah, exactly. We Rise has a teacher's guide too, and a poster. Well, I was going to ask you, Tiffany, what is your experience with audiobooks in the library setting?
I'm a big proponent of what they call multimodal learning, which is any way that they can interpret that information, however it goes in, have it. I mean, graphic novels, audiobooks, I'm a proponent of it because kids understand and take in information differently. So if they have to hear it to be able to have a context to understand it, I'm all for it. Any way that they can get it, because you want them to understand the story. And once they start appreciating that, then they'll maybe take more time with that book. But sometimes we throw books in front of kids and they get so anxious about it, it makes it harder for them and kind of builds that wall. So if it takes a narrator, especially when you get an audio book with a great narrator who could really act out the story and the voices and things like that, it's a way of engagement. So I can't, as somebody who is a teacher and a librarian, please, if that's what it takes to bring that kid into a book, let it be. If it's a comic book or a graphic novel, let it be, because it's going to build onto something else.
Hey, I see a nice comment on here from one of our my comment, Amber Saylor, and she's an educator, teacher, English professor. She mentioned almost back to the point of getting young people to love writing. She's, I think, doing a better job of showing how writing and reading is actually a part of all we love and enjoy. Really getting young people to to understand it. That's a great point. Thank you so much for that, Emerson.
Mhm. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so we're about coming to an end. So let's take a closing comment for each one of you. Hey, everybody that came in, please share this video. It's going to stay up on Facebook, or they can come to We Are Here page. We're serious about this. We got other
Yes.
sessions coming up in the near future. Thank you, awesome brothers, for being a part of the very first in Harvard. You kicked this off. You kicked this shit off. Excuse my language. Can I say that? But hey, it was cool. We enjoyed every minute of it. Tony, Wade, Gordon,
Yes.
thank you so much. So hey, yeah, definitely all the books that are out there. Hey, Tony and Wade, y'all had me digging up some stuff too. Tony, Committed to Breathing. Who was at Third World Press? This book is such an epitome of what's happening now in the world. The state capitol is
2003.
January. And look, this book came out when, Tony?
2003.
Mm.
The year of Call-Up Letters to Santa Claus came out.
Okay. So yeah, so me and Tony worked together on this project as well. But later,
That's a beautiful cover, man. That brother died, man.
I
Bob Marley. Oh, what's that one right there, man? The president looks like me. Not,
Yeah.
you know,
got all
Obama.
these books over here. Wade,
Got
Journey,
classics. Yep.
Journey, it's just collection of poetry by Wade Hudson. Yeah. So,
And,
hey,
and Tony did the introduction to it.
Can y'all give some parting advice to Black boys and young Black men of what you would want to say to them this year in terms of literacy and reading? Can you please give them advice or a message?
Their parents. Yeah.
And their parents, yes.
I would say parents, take your kids to the library on a regular if you can. Surround them with books, give them books, even, you know, movies, and have discussions around those things. But for the kids, don't be embarrassed about loving to read. Don't be shy about it. Don't hide it. Don't keep it in your book bag. I used to have books on me all the time when I was a kid. You know, I started reading seriously when I was 15. So a lot of these kids have a head start on me. You know, I would have big baggy, you know, jackets with big pockets and stuff like that, cargo pockets or whatever. And I have paperbacks in there. Be on the subway in New York, on the buses, read. You know, not having somebody in front of me is picking their nose and stuff like that. So I could be able to just read and block out the crowd. Yeah, and don't be afraid to follow your dreams. And carry a notepad and a pen at all times. Don't rely on devices only. That's
Gordon?
about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if I were to say something to young kids, I would say don't stop reading. I used to read a lot, like when I was little, and then I didn't read too much through my teens. And then I started doing books, which made me start reading. And then just recently, and I'm 48, I just started buying a whole bunch of books, because sometimes you start thinking, well, I don't like to read. Then I realized what I enjoy reading is I love history, and I love short stories. I love books that are like combinations of like lots of newspaper articles. I like things in short bites. So like reading comes in tons of different forms. So if you're not a long novel person, maybe you're a comic book person, maybe you're a short story person, but figure out what it is you like to consume and consume that, you know. And as far as what my first love is the visuals, like if there are museums in your area, a lot of them have free nights. Just go look at everything. And just know, and just my big piece of life advice is that you belong everywhere. You belong in the fanciest neighborhood, and the hood is hood. You know, like there are no limits to the places where you can go and be comfortable. This entire world is yours, and you belong in all those spaces. Do not limit yourself.
Yeah, I just want to ditto what Gordon has said, but for boys, Black boys in particular, reading is cool. Reading is cool. But I wanted to share this message with parents. It is so important to introduce reading to your child or your children when they are very young. And it is important for your children when they are growing up to see you read, because you can be that role model for them. And make sure that there are books around the house,
Yeah.
you know, so that when they are moving around, they'll see a book. And sometimes, particularly with boys, they'll pick up a book when nobody's looking, and then they're reading it, you know. So learn to establish a family reading tradition, and your children will grow up in that tradition, and they will be readers.
I got a very quick question. I know we say we want this is the last point, but I had on my list, going, any recommendations for parents in terms of art supplies, inexpensive, that they can get?
Oh, okay. So check this out. I feel like everybody should have a sketchbook, and even hardbound sketchbooks, in a lot of places are under $10, right? If you don't have a sketchbook, you can just take some computer paper, lined or unlined, and just fold it. Have someone ask your teacher if you can staple a corner. That's all you need. And then newsprint is the best surface ever, and it's cheap, like 18 by 24 pads, like under $10 with 50 sheets of paper in them. So like, I'm a professional, and I was just teaching my niece, and she's 13 years old, and I got all the materials in the world, and we're just mowing through newsprint. And the other thing is, try to draw things you don't know how to draw. Look at things and try to draw them. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. It's only paper. There's lots of paper. It's okay.
What about the color painting, the crayons?
So I really feel like you could just start out with your regular number 2 pencil. I love charcoal pencils. I'm a big, and they're not that expensive either. $1.50, $2 a pencil, not that bad. But you can start out with a regular number 2 pencil. That's how I started. It's number 2 pencil, drawing in my school notebooks, probably at the wrong times during class. But yeah, man, like just try to make that available to your kids. This is one other thing we're talking about with the books, and Wade said leave books around for kids to find. Sometimes we look at like, oh, how many books are on the coffee table? It's not clutter if it's inspirational. You know what I mean? So leave it around. And when I didn't have a big studio, I had an easel, and we have a little house. It's right next to the dining room table. It drove me and my wife a little crazy that it was just sitting there, but it has to be there, or I'm not going to do it. So you got to make the things you want to do easy to do.
That's
and so
right.
if you want your kids to read, the books have to be out. If you want the kids to draw, the drawing materials have to be out. You got to try to carve out a little space, and so like what you may give up in order, you may gain in watching your kid really latch on to something.
There are always going to be several basketballs around the house, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You got that. Hey, thank you so much, Cliff. Tiffany, you want to close it out for us?
Yes, I just want to say thank you for participating in our first event on We Are Here Literature. Please go to weareherelit.org to see more resources that are available. Support these authors and illustrators that are showing reflections of us in our community here today, and others. Go to your independent Black bookstores, all of that. Support our community so we can produce more, is what we're saying. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Hire more Black artists and illustrators to come to your communities. Write those grants. Peace.
Yes.
Thank you, Tiffany and Pat. Great panel.
Thanks, everybody. It was good to see y'all.
Take care, Tony. Gordon, take care, fellas.
All right. Thank
Bye,
you, big
y'all.
brother Wade. All right, now. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna play us out. Y'all go ahead. All right, well done. All right.